right, so I got something very different for you today. This is a React video. I'm not a proper YouTuber until I do a React video. And today I'll be looking at a video titled Luck Skill Victory, the ingenious way LSV won an unwinnable matchup. This is a video for Hungry on Plane by Pastry Time, Julian Carr. He's great, and I feel bad because he reached out to me before this video, but it kind of got lost in the shuffle. So I didn't have any input on the video, but I wanted to take a look at it now. I watched a little bit, and then I realized I should be actually making some content out of this because it's really interesting. He's talking about my quarterfinals match at Pro Tour Berlin in 2008. It's the first Pro Tour I top 8'd, the only Pro Tour I've won, and the quarters match actually was insane. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch this video, and I'm going to be pausing it, like good React content, to just kind of see what he's saying lines up with kind of my memories of what happened, or add a little bit of content or flavor to it. And I think it'll be a fun trip down memory lane. So let's get in here. And of course, I would encourage you to check out the original video on YouTube. He put a lot of work into it. It's a great video, so would definitely like you to be able to support that too. But let's see how this goes. I first time doing something like this, but it seemed like a fun time. So let's dive in. All right.
It's 2008 in Berlin, and a fresh extended format is upon this year's Pro Tour season. A little under a month ago, the latest set, Shards of Alara, came out, and more importantly, Extended has just undergone rotation for the first time in years. If you're unfamiliar, Extended was a former competitive Magic format whose intention was to provide a home for cards as they rotated out of Standard, which used to undergo rotation.
So what he's saying basically is Extended is a little like what Modern was, if you think about it. Modern's actually kind of bigger than Extended was at the time, but Extended was like cards that weren't legal in Standard, but not all the way far back as Legacy. So fairly powerful, but not like super busted, though we try to change that for this tournament. And I think more akin to Modern than anything else if you have never played Extended.
Every 2 years or so. To prevent the format from receiving too much bloat from new cards consistently entering the format though, and to distinguish it from the already existing Eternal formats of Legacy and Vintage, Extended also had rotation, but did so at a much slower pace. This is the moment we find ourselves.
Yeah, Extended rotated, but kind of slowly, and again was generally quite a bit more powerful than Standard, but definitely not as powerful as Legacy.
Coming into the Pro Tour, with Invasion and Odyssey leaving the format, and Magic's pro players having a brand new format to pour over and try to break. And they will break it.
That was me, by the way, playing against Kenny Oberg in the top 8. And here, we've got BDM and Randy.
The problem is that the best deck in the format that was supposed to be a secret is going to be discovered by everyone. You see, this format is going to end up being defined by one-drops, many of which have been released in the Time's most recent blocks, and the race is on to try and beat each other to the finish line. This is a format where every team has come to the same conclusion, that the format has a deck that is so broken, it will even come to be the event's informal name. Like Pro Tour Rebels of the past, as the final 8 players are locked into place for Sunday's competition, Sixth streak continues as Kenny Mulligans once again with how Legacy.
I clicked on the wrong thing. Hold on, bear with me.
Mirrodin,
all right, I made my way back. So this is the top 8, and I'm sorry, covering Sebastian Taylor. I don't remember everyone there, but that's actually me here, right in the top thing. Young LSV, 2008. Yeah, that was a long time ago. This is Mate Zadalkai, if you remember him. He did a bunch of commentary, still does commentary. Big Z. An extremely young Martin Yuza. Wow. Yeah, that's Martin. All right. We weren't really pals back then. It's funny. This is before, this is even before Team Channel Fireball existed, before Channel Fireball existed. And he was one of the Czech pros, and I didn't really know him all that well. Tomohiro Saito, almost Hall of Famer. And then Kenny Oberg. He's the one I played in the top 8. So we're going to see more of him this video, but let's keep going.
Strategy. This event is defined by modern Magic sets, in the sense that many of the most important cards at this tournament were first printed in the now ubiquitous Magic card frame. Mirrodin, Shards of Alara, Morningtide, Eventide, and yes, even Champions of Kamigawa all have cards that will have a lasting impact on how Berlin unfolds. And at the center of everything is a player finally in his first Pro Tour top 8, making up one of the 6 Elf decks that have taken this event by storm.
So yeah, there were 6 Elf stacks in the top 8. One thing that's actually a little different is Julian talks here about how it was the deck of the tournament, everyone knew about it. That was not entirely true. A lot of people did, but one of the quirks of this being long enough ago that information wasn't disseminated quite as efficiently, everyone who knew how good Elves was basically played Elves. Anyone who you played against who wasn't playing Elves didn't know how good Elves was. You actually had this like kind of weird kind of dynamic where when you played the non-mirrors, you kind of rolled them. That's why there were 6 Elves decks in the top 8. Everyone who was like really tuned in and knew how good Elves was just played it. So it was actually like a weird asymmetry going on in this format.
The problem? His opponent is playing the only deck in the room that looked at a metagame skewed towards creatures and creatures that combo and built a rogue deck that only he and his team cooked up. One that is explicitly designed to dismantle elves. Scott-Vargas is a Magic legend, but even he knows this matchup is terrible for him. Every avenue Sweden's Kenny Oberg leads him down just closes down his game plan further and further. Down 0-2 in an absolutely desperate situation.
Okay, so let's talk about the decks here since he didn't mention them too much. So I was playing Elves, and this is the Elf combo deck. So it has, basically the engine is Glimpse of Nature, Heritage Druid, Nettle Sentinel, and the combination is you tap Nettle Sentinel with Heritage Druid and plus another Elf to add mana. That Elf draws you a card, it untaps the Nettle Sentinel. Once you have 2 Nettle Sentinels, you're gaining a little bit of mana. Once you have 3, you're just completely popping off. Cast a bunch of spells, and we had our kill as Grape Shot. Other people had other ways to kill, but basically the core of the deck was that you cast Glimpse and you won as early as turn 2. The deck had some really the capability of really busted draws. And I mentioned that the people who weren't playing Elves were all people who didn't know how good Elves was. Kenny Oberg was actually kind of the exception to that. Let's take a look at his deck. So he was running a Tezzerator deck, and this deck was completely designed to beat up on Elves and other small creature decks. He's got Chalice of the Void. He's got Engineered Explosives. He had Trinisphere. Stifle could be kind of annoying. Vendilion Clicks. Vidalcan Shackles. And it was so bad that in the night before, when I made top 8 and I knew I was playing against Kenny, me and Paul Cheon, we tested the matchup. He won 9 games in a row with Kenny's deck before I said, you know what, I'm just going to go to bed. I'm going to get some rest and we'll figure out more. And we had a plan, but I'm going to let Julian go and talk about kind of what happened. But these are the 2 decks coming into battle. Me on Elf combo, which did have a little bit of Where to Fight fair, and we'll see about that. And against a Tezzerator deck, which this deck was really sweet, a very innovative deck. And Kenny rightfully gets a lot of attention for it.
With the matchup looking as bad as advertised, Luis must rally for the reverse sweep or be eliminated. And to do so, he'll find the one
I started 0-2, by the way. Like, it's top 8 at this point was, and back to it, luckily, best of 5. I lost the first 2 games. I was down 0-2 in a matchup. I had gone 0-9 the night before. And where I was at mentally was, you know what? It was pretty sweet to make a top 8 of a Pro Tour.
Road Oberg couldn't close. And believe me when I say it's completely unexpected.
Magic broadcast graphics have also come a long way. We're just lucky this was actually recorded.
Hello and welcome to Pro Tour Berlin. Brady Bueller here with Brian David Marshall. 453 players have come to Berlin to check out this freshly rotated extended environment. Invasion block, gone. Odyssey block, gone. Sensei's Divining Top, gone. Pretty impactful format, wide open, fresh. What are people playing?
Well, Sensei's Divining Top seems to have opened, the banning of Sensei's Divining Top seems to have opened the door for one of the most exciting, kind of worst kept secret decks at this Pro Tour, which is...
I still think it was a reasonable secret.
Elves are the worst kept secret coming into Pro Tour Berlin. Every team has found a version of the Elf Ball combo deck that uses a combination of Glimpse of Nature, Heritage Druid, and Nettle Sentinel to overwhelm their opponents in a single turn. If you're familiar with how Legacy Elves of the past works, you'll have a pretty good grasp on how this strategy plays out. If you're unfamiliar, just know that the general goal is to build up some mana elves, cast a Glimpse of Nature to begin your combo turn, and then cast creatures to draw you more cards while continuously untapping Nettle Sentinel. Untapping the Sentinel doesn't do anything by itself except give you something fun to do between spellcasts, and if you have either Birchall Rangers or 2008's new hotness Heritage Druid and a few extra elves lying around, you can make boatloads of mana as you're doing this. All this to say that a handful of elves and a glimpse can quickly turn into an overwhelming board that draws you cards and generates you mana whenever you cast a green creature spell in your mono green deck packed with creatures. Once you've established that, it's pretty easy to draw most or all of your deck and then simply find a card to win with. Most of the players have opted for the very stylish win condition of Predator Dragon, devouring huge chunks of their boards to blast opponents' life totals in one fell swoop with the Hasty Dragon. But LSV and the team have opted for the Storm Spell Grape Shot, a difference that's going to make a big impact on how LSV fares at the event, especially.
For what it's worth, I actually don't think our deck was built that well. I think Weird Harvest wasn't good, and I think Grape Shot was kind of a mediocre win condition. But what mattered was the engine was really good
Against the other elf lists. Now, there's actually another green 1-drop that might arguably make the biggest impact on the overall event. While I don't have the data or a Pocket Frank cast in handy to crunch the exact numbers for me, I'm pretty confident this card is the single most played card in the entire tournament. Would you like to guess what card
that's
it
not
is?
Wirewood Symbiote. Most played card in the entire tournament?
Better yet, in a top 8 full of green decks, can you figure out how many copies of this card are even in the top 8?
What card is this? Oh, Wild
That's
Mikado.
right, the most played card in Berlin is also one that had no copies convert into the top 8 at all, but its impact on the tournament metagame is huge. The card is another new Shards of Alara printing that
gotta
has
be Wild
shaken up the
Mikado.
status quo of how aggressive
Zoo
decks
was
operate.
such a good
Wild
matchup.
Mikado, almost laughable today given the power of modern Magic's 1-drops.
Wild
but
Mikado
in a
got
world like
banned
Third
at
Age,
one point.
Savannah Lions, Jackalpuff, and even the legendary Isamaru Hound of Kondo have all been above rate threats. Wild Mikado, aka Code Kitty, being effectively a 1-mana 3/3, was a genuinely meta-defining creature. Remember, at this juncture in Magic history, Tarmogoyf, a giant but vanilla 2-drop, is one of the best threats around, and
True.
Wild Mikado is similarly big for half of the mana cost, with Ravnica blocks Shocklands, making sure you can always buff your cat to maximum size. As a result, Zoo is the most expected deck in the format, and I believe the most represented in
Beatdown, that's Ben
Berlin.
Lundquist
Every deck,
deck in
even if most of
Paladin.
the other decks people ended up preparing were Elves, all have to keep the low-to-the-ground creature strategy at the forefront of their minds. Sure, they'll need to bring enough tools to still beat Zoo, but after that, it's mostly
Kenny also had a
rematches
bunch of
and
fire
the odd
spouts in
rogue
his
deck you have to
sideboard.
contend with, and brutally fast combo decks are traditionally pretty good at picking off random brews. So as the dust settles and the tournament rolls on, the expected result happens. Zoo starts off with huge representation, and by the time day 2 rolls around, it's basically nowhere to be seen at the top tables. And spoiler alert, but after a cut to the top 8, the field is mostly little green elves, with Zoo absolutely nowhere in sight. Wild Mikado, despite its fearsome size, is just unable to contend in a field that's become combo versus other, especially when that field was expecting you. There are 2 players in this top 8 though not on elves, and both of them predictably have had success betting against the power of the Glimpse of Nature-based combo deck. Germany's Dennis Sinner is on Fairies, an extended
Yeah, this Fairies deck, let's take a look. It's got Spell Stutter, which is great in the matchup. Vendilion Click. Mistbind Click's actually solid, but that one, their Elves tap for mana, so it's not as good. And then a bunch of counters and cheap removal. And Jite. Jite was actually one of the best cards in the format against the Elves deck. So this, I remember Dennis. I remember him doing well with this deck. Also, Chalice is in the sideboard. So the few people in the tournament who knew Elves was good and prepared for it got rewarded. But most people either played it or just had no idea it was a thing.
of maybe the most successful standard deck of the Lowen era, a flexible, efficient aggro control deck that has the threats and counter magic to dismantle the elves. Unfortunately, even though Sinner likes his matchup against the expected elves, he doesn't like his other possible matchup in the top 8. In fact, no one does. Seriously, everyone in their top 8 profile has named either this deck or the Elves Mirror as their worst matchup.
That's
the
me,
number 1
Tezzerator,
seed coming
that I
into
played
the
round
top
1.
8, who has spent all weekend feasting on Zoo and Elves with a super sweet unique brew using another powerful yet unexpected card from Shards of Alara, the namesake of the deck, Tezzerator the Seeker. That's right, Sweden's Kenny Öberg is on Tezzerator, and his approach to this predictable extended metagame has been basically the polar opposite of everyone else. If the format is defined by powerful 1-drops and fast creatures, then Kenny's deck is designed to shut that all off. A Trinket Mage powered control deck that uses Tezzeret as another, bigger Trinket Mage, Kenny has brought all of the stacks pieces to play. And it's not like Trinket Mage doesn't have a good resume in Extended. It won the last Pro Tour in this format in the hands of French wonderkid Remy Fortier, but the big difference between then and now is that Sensei's Divining Top has been banned, which not only shuts off Trinket Mage's best target, but effectively
Great ban.
takes the oppressive Counterbalance Top combo out with it. And this is music to the Elves' ears, because Counterbalance Top is so oppressive to play against when half of your deck or more relies on its 1-drops. It's already tough enough to fight through a one-sided Chalice of the Void, but even more so when the number they always
Julie
have
killed it
access
with the
to at
graphics
top in
here.
play is 1, the best number against your deck. So logically, Kenny Öberg did the next best thing and registered literal Chalice of the Void instead. In a cool bit of deck building, Kenny doesn't have any 2-drops in his main deck at all, so Chalice on 2 is basically free for his deck, but in certain matchups both 0 and 1 are playable, because even though Chalice is symmetrical, unlike Counterbalance Top, Tezzerator is built around being able to utilize it when it's in play, and the other decks in the format are not. It gets worse for the Elves players though, because not only does Kenny have access to Chalice, which he can Trinket Mage for, but his bigger artifacts like Ensnaring Bridge, Vidalcan Shackles, and especially Trinisphere are all Silver Bullets Tezzeret himself
I will say that Bridge and Shackles don't really do much. The Trinisphere was very annoying.
can tutor up. Even the 4 fire spells in his sideboard for the Zoo matchup have a good amount of splash damage against the Elves' plan B of trying to attack the good old-fashioned way. So with 7 other players not named Kenny Öberg in the top 8, playing a deck that literally no one wants to play against, who else would have the fortune of beginning their first ever Pro Tour top 8 than LSV, whose turbo version of the Elf deck that's built to beat the Mirror especially is even worse off than your average build in a matchup that begins at bad and rapidly trends towards worse. Kenny's metagame gambit has worked perfectly, and now he's lined up against a run of Elf decks, looking like he's solved the Pro Tour top 8 before they even start shuffling. But the games must be played, so Kenny and LSV begin the feature match of the quarterfinals with LSV staring down the only deck in the room that he didn't want to see. And the series starts about as badly as it could for LSV,
look at that
as he
video
loses
quality.
2 rapid games, seemingly helpless against a strategy that's tailored to beat him. Game 1 sees Kenny quickly deploy a Chalice of the Void on 1, which shuts off exactly 28 cards in Luis's main
Chalice
deck,
was
although
brutal.
it was too late to catch the Llanowar Elves that Luis has already played. Tezzerator follows soon after though and tutors up Trinisphere, one of Oberg's Haymaker tutor targets that all but seals up this game. After Luis loses his only non-land permanent to Kenny's incoming Vidalcan Shackles, he decides to just pack up all his cards instead, lamenting after the loss, quote, "That was the game where I have more of a chance." And he's right, with the remaining games to be played sideboarded and his deck being tuned to win fast.
Right, so back then, it's best of 5, but it was 1 game 1 and 4 up to 4 post-sideboard games. They later made a kind of more logical choice, which is 2 game 1s and 3 post-sideboard games. But the fact that he had 4 Fire Spouts as well was like, okay, yeah, I'm just going to lose here.
The game LSV is most likely to steal is the first one, and that opportunity sails by. Game 2 starts even worse as Kenny plays Chalice of the Void on 1 on turn 1 this time instead of turn 2, once again shutting off more than half of LSV's non-land cards. While Luis does have the Viridian Shaman this time to stay in the game, the other half of Kenny's control deck, you know, the one filled with sweepers like Firespell and engineered explosives, slowly deletes LSV's board. Kenny re-establishes a Chalice on 1 off of a Trinket Mage and controls the game long enough to pick up another easy-looking win, not even needing a stack piece as powerful as the 3-ball this time. Swiftly, Luis is down 0-2, and I'm pretty confident they've spent more time shuffling than they have playing the 2 games that Kenny has won. If Luis wants to keep his Pro Tour dream alive and get through this hellish matchup, he's gonna have to do it with his back against the wall. Game 3 starts with at least some good news for LSV, as Kenny takes a mulligan down to 6. Getting lucky isn't strictly part of the plan, but Luis needs every percentage point he can get here, and Kenny playing with 1 fewer card here does increase his chances. The Elves start is quite a bit faster this game too, as he deploys a few creatures, but once again Kenny has the turn 2 Chalice. But LSV's weapon of choice in this game is actually Umezawa's Jitte, which he...
So we after testing, we're like, we're not going to beat him with the combo that often. Like, it's possible, but we can't rely on it, and there's so much to slog through. And we took it a different direction, which is Umezawa's Jitte is actually really good against him. It's a potent sideboard card because it gets whatever creature's equipped out of Fire Spout range. Pretty hard to shackles a creature once it's equipped, though obviously it works beforehand. And it's a 2 casting cost card, so Chalice on 1 doesn't stop it. All you have to do is just have a random dork in play, and it can kind of end the game quickly. So not the best plan in the world, especially since he has ways to deal with it, but pretty reasonable one, I thought.
Equips to his elf to start winning the old-fashioned way, trying to bring Kenny's life total down to 0 through combat damage. That pressure abates though as Trinket Mage finds an engineered explosive that ends up destroying the Jitte and an Elvish Visionary. Even though Kenny is down to 9 from these attacks, it looks grim, with most of LSV's deck not castable right now and only 1/1s left for the beatdown plan. Jitte was the best way for LSV to deal damage quickly, and with that gone, it's looking much more difficult to get the last few points across. Still, Luis at least has a board to try and apply pressure with. Until he doesn't. Firespout, the same tool Oberg used to trounce Zoo all weekend long, also does.
I'm watching this and I'm like, wait, how did I win this? How did that happen? It looks terrible.
Work against Luis's plan of playing Zoo but worse as he tries to swing in with his tiny army.
Zoo but
At
worse
this
is a
point,
good way
this
to
game
describe
and
it.
series looks completely hopeless for Luis. No board, staring down a Chalice, and needing to play at least a Viridian Shaman to pick off the pesky artifact, which, mercifully, Luis does have. When Tezzerator tutors up a Trinisphere yet again, LSV responds with yet another artifact-hating elf, and more importantly,
Viridian Shaman was one of my best cards, if not my best. 3 mana, doesn't get Chalice, doesn't get Spell Snare, Trinisphere doesn't actually affect that, and blows up his best card. So drawing up my 2 Viridian Shamans, that was a good plan.
giving himself a significantly bigger force to try and chip away at Kenny's single-digit life total. So a few turns later, when Luis finally plays a glimpse of nature for the first time in this match, it seems as though the beatdown diversion has lasted long enough for him to find a window to combo in. But after playing a few more creatures, he just passes the turn back. It turns out Glimpse was just for a bit of velocity, as LSV still has the plan of attacking in order to win this game, and a few turns later, Kenny fails to mount enough pressure and an Umezawa's Jitte comes down once more to make the small creatures threatening enough to push through for a win, and Kenny Oberg loses the seemingly unlosable matchup.
No, Kenny scoops him off, so Luis Scott-Vargas has taken game 3. The
roar from the Americans in the audience.
Yeah,
you
Kenny
can
Oberg
get you on back
still
there.
leads 2-1. Does get to go first now, but Luis is on the board.
Still, Luis's Jitte ended up being a good enough threat on its own, simply on the merit of making any creature a possible Titan. Jitte Loki is kind of the secret sauce to this plan for Luis. As it turns out, having a persistent threat that sticks around on the board and pumps any little creature you happen to draw, while also helping you dodge Fire Spout, Vidalcan Shackles, and to a lesser extent Explosives,
There we go,
is
he nailed it.
pretty good. While the famous
Exactly the
Pointy
things I
Stick
was
of Doom
saying.
was intended to help Luis grind out against the Zoo decks this Pro Tour, it's doing enough here in a matchup that's so bad he could basically never combo that it would at least let him take one more game than everyone thought he would, himself likely included. Just to reiterate, Luis is using his grindy anti-Zoo plan against the control deck because comboing is so impossible.
You know,
it's not
you
great,
do
but
what you can.
completely changing the nature of your deck and downgrading it into a worse version of another deck that Kenny has smashed all weekend might actually be LSV's best shot. So the hope remains for at least another game as Oberg and LSV shuffle up for game 4, and the Elven lucky streak continues as Kenny mulligans once again, this time going down all the way to a measly 4-card hand. Again, I am no
do remember
mathematician, but even the worst matchup imaginable has got to have some percentage points flowing back to the Elves when Oberg starts with so few cards.
Honestly, in the top 8 of a Pro Tour, it's like you kind of hope your opponents just keep their 7 and have... No, you want them to mold a 4. I was really happy about that.
As the players pass back and forth for the first few turns, establishing their respective boards, Oberg fires off a Vendilion Click, getting a peek at LSV's hand, and he sees something that I don't think anyone expected to see. Another card that Luis had in
Big
his
Mike.
sideboard to help grind out the Zoo matchup, and also one that wasn't present in earlier iterations of his deck this series. In fact, thanks to the text coverage, we actually know how both players sideboarded after game 1, and the card Oberg sees and eventually takes with his click wasn't present in Luis's game 2 deck at all. An unassuming one-off for a completely different matchup that just so happens to line up perfectly. Michaeloth. Modeled after the legendary threat Verdant Force, Michaeloth is a big creature that rapidly makes a ton of other small creatures. A self-contained
Yeah, this was a 5-mana 4/4 that you could sack creatures to make it bigger, and then on your upkeep, it made a tokens equal to the number of counters it had. Big Michaeloth. And it wasn't for the matchup. It was for like kind of like the grindy like creature matchups, and especially ones that have a trouble killing like an 8/8 or 6/6 or 10/10. But after looking at the stats, I'm like, yeah, this thing survives Fire Spout, definitely doesn't get chaliced or spell snared. If I sack a creature, probably can't shackles it. Yeah, I should board this in. This is good.
threat that's great at grinding down Zoo, which is the reason that Luis even has the card in his sideboard alongside Jitte to begin with, and that's been shockingly effective in this matchup when his deck is reduced to a simple back and forth of combat. Michaeloth is so critical to Luis's plan this game that he even chewed his throat with Summoner's Pact a few turns later, and soon after that, a bit
I want to just emphasize this turn. I cast Summoner's Pact and go and get Big Mike, play it, set no other creatures in play. Next turn, pay the 4 to pay for Summoner's Pact. So I just basically spent a bunch of mana to just tutor up a 5-mana 4/4 no text. But you got to do what you got to do, and it was got a Jitte.
Big Mike is picking up the Jitte and swinging in. Vidalcan Shackles eventually is able to deal with a giant threat, but LSV's smaller elves and the Jitte are enough to bring us to a final game. In many ways, Michaeloth is actually the ideal threat here. It's big enough that it's difficult to steal with shackles, it cannot be shot with engineered explosives, and it's way too big to dispatch with Fire Spout. While Kenny does have some forms of permission, like Venter and Cryptic Command, he doesn't have a lot of those in his deck. His entire strategy was to be the control deck that was the most efficient at keeping the small threats that have been so prevalent at this tournament at bay. Whether they're planning to attack or combo with them, small creatures have been the defining feature of this Pro Tour. So LSV finding a way to sidestep all of that, with Jitte supercharging any creature that manages to stick and deciding to bring in a big dumb fatty like Michaeloth is a stroke of genius. Michaeloth looks silly, clunky, and way too expensive to have any bearing on a matchup where your
It's not
deck
wrong.
is built to combo off as early as turn 2, but it just so happens to be the perfect threat against this control opponent. Against a Surgeon with so many precise tools, it turns out a big blunt object is just what LSV needs. As we begin the final game, both players mulligan this time, which seems only fair given how many mulligans Kenny has taken since being
Not
up
fair. I
2-0.
shouldn't
But he
have to
probably
mulligan.
felt there was no world where he'd ever have to play a 5th game against a matchup this good. An early Jitte once again comes down for LSV as Kenny continues to try and keep the board under control, but Kenny Oberg arguably makes a critical mistake early in the 5th game, getting a great furnace with his Trinket Mage to give him a second color for his explosives, but failing to pop explosives on 2 to take out the Jitte before Viridian Shaman shoots down his only non-blue mana source, opting to use Pirate Spellbomb instead. Shaman, by the way, has been excellent all matchup long,
Oh, yeah.
consistently picking
Best
apart
card.
Kenny's powerful but more expensive artifacts and never letting him establish a big enough board presence to deal with the tidal wave of GT holding creatures. Slowly but surely, with no interest in combo killing his opponent despite that being the talk of this entire Pro Tour, LSV whittles down his opponent's life total as Oberg struggles to make progress.
Look, there's a shackles that can't steal the GT.
All of the anti-combo answers and silver bullets, a host of different efficient board wipes and ways to control small creatures at a Pro Tour that is from two different sides been defined by just that blowing people up all weekend long. All of the matchup data pointing to Kenny as the rogue genius that legitimately broke the format in Berlin and was poised to be its champion. All of that just can't compete with the luck, skill, and cunning of Luis Scott-Vargas, who took his explosive combo deck and didn't win a single game with anything other than attack.
Yeah, I didn't combo a single time. I did a lot of GTing, a lot of Viridian Shamaning, some Michael Lothing. I mean, that was good. And it's hard to overstate how it felt in the moment of like playing 9 practice games, losing all of them, starting 0-2, and just feeling like, all right, well, I had a good run, but I'm going to still try to do give myself the best shot. And then just like slowly as the games progress, like you saw this game when I go like turn on Elf, turn 2 GT into 2 open mana, and he just doesn't have the spell snare, which I imagine he had spell snares in his deck once I had showed how important GT was. And it just like he gets the Great Furnace and plays it, but doesn't play the explosives. And I pop the Great Furnace, he doesn't have a second color. And it's like, wow, is this going to happen? Is this actually happening? When I got the Michaeloth with Summoner's Pact in game 4, it was like, all right, this is ridiculous, but I kind of think this is going to work. And then it just kept working. Story of my life, I guess.
Blocking. But most importantly, as the sun sets on this incredible quarterfinal matchup, none of it can compete with a 5-mana 4/4. Michaeloth, the last card cast in this series, becomes the unexpected hero and bails Luis out of a matchup he was never supposed to have a chance in. It's wild to think that even though Nakatl was nowhere to be seen in this top 8, it still had a pretty big impact on the event. If Zoo isn't such a big part of the metagame coming into Berlin, then no one's going to bring sideboard cards for it. And if that happens, LSV isn't loaded up on GT and Michaeloth for that specific matchup. As we know, Michaeloth not only won LSV the unwinnable matchup, but in essence ended up winning him the entire Pro Tour. Once he's out of the steely grasp of the Tezzerator.
Yeah, after this, I played against Tomohiro Saito in top 4, and then Matei Zadokai in the finals. And in game 5 against Saito, I'm on the draw. I turn 2'd him. I turn 2 killed him, which I think I did twice the entire tournament. It's not easy to do. But look at this. I mean, this I think is it. Yeah, this is game 5. I have 2 lands in play. He has 2 lands in play, and I just got to just completely go off.
Tezzerator, Luis plays a close 5 games against Japan's Tomohiro Saito, managing to combo out the other Elf player in yet another reverse sweep before playing another mirror match against Matei Zadokai.
I also started down 0-2 against Saito, as Julian says, and it was a lot of comebacks. I'm really glad it was best of 5 and not best of 3. I'll just say that.
Where LSV can finally show off why everyone is calling his deck the fastest version of Elves in the room, as he sweeps the finals in a matter of turns to be crowned.
I will say that my deck wasn't the fastest Elf deck. Like, it wasn't that much faster than the other Elf deck. It was maybe a tiny bit faster because we didn't play the Hive Master, the 2-mana 1/1 that makes a token, and that card is a little slow. But the big difference is we had 4 Thoughtseizes in the sideboard, and that was really good. The Elves decks were not playing that. So in the mirror, having access to Thoughtseize was really good. And I think our sideboard for this tournament was really good. 4 Thoughtseize, 4 Jite, some Viridian Shamans, the Michaeloth, and we just identified some Thorn of Amethyst for Storm, which I beat in the last round to make top 8. We had, I think, identified some good sideboard cards and maxed out on four of each of them. For this tournament, I tested with Patrick Chapin, Paul Chian, Manuel Bucher, and then the Frenchies. So like the Ruels and Levy. And I remember coming to the conclusion that 4 Thoughtseize, 4 Jite was the way to go. And that was really smart.
The champion of Pro Tour Berlin. LSV is one of the greatest players of all time and was going to win a Pro Tour at some point in his Hall of Fame career, but the fact that he won the first one he ever made top 8 in the manner that he did is pretty sweet. Berlin was an event filled with expectations. Everyone expected to see Zoo and therefore Gun to beat it. Everyone expected Elves to be the best deck in the format and that no one else knew that, so everyone played it. And everyone expected Tezzerator to obliterate the field of Wild Nakatl and Heritage Druids, and it did. Everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face though, and the unexpected heavyweight Big Mike turned out to be exactly the fighter LSV needed.
That had to be Mike Tyson, by the way.
It wasn't pretty, and it wasn't expected, but boy was it effective.
Scott-Vargas attacks for 3. Shaman and Birchwell Ranger get in there.
Therefore, oh, Michaeloth.
Oh, Michaeloth. Wow.
That's so smug. Their little expectant face. Big Mike, you got anything?
Kenny
No, I don't think so.
Hello, Jamie Wakefield.
I don't even think I sacked anything to it.
Really, he needs... I have no idea how he gets out of this.
Kenny does not look happy.
And he devours one.
Yeah, devours one. So
Oh,
it's a
it's after one,
6-6.
okay.
In theory, he could land shackles to steal it. So explosives blows up the
Explodes the
GTA.
GTA, yeah.
Yeah, he has to go land shackles and steal the 6-6. But I don't think he's got that. There it is.
Boom.
There's the handshake. Oh my gosh. Luis Scott-Vargas.
Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, and if you want to get notified about more videos like this, you should tap that subscribe button too. Get in the comments and let me
Yeah, please do. Julian made a really cool piece of content. It was really fun for me to walk down memory lane. I'm not looking to be a React channel, don't worry, but this seemed pretty timely, and I would love for him to make sure he gets sufficient views and whatnot from putting all this work in.
know your thoughts on LSV's incredible run. And lastly, if you want to support the channel more directly, you can do so via Patreon, where you get sneak peeks at future videos, contribute to the monthly mailbag, and join the Patreon exclusive Discord. You can also donate via coffee if you're looking for another way to help the channel. All these links are in the description below. If you're looking for more videos on Magic Goats winning Pro Tours, by the way, then you should check out this one on the German juggernaut himself, Kai Bude.
Well, these are my thoughts on the video, I guess. I didn't leave it in the comments. I'll put a link for the video in the description. And yeah, that was a blast. Berlin was a funny tournament. It was, again, my first Pro Tour top 8, my only Pro Tour win. I went there and tested with, Chion. It was like one of my best friends. And it was interesting. Neither of us had ever made a top 8. I made top 8 playing Elves and played this unwinnable matchup, which really was, but managed a combination of, luck, skill, victory. It's the reason it's a good nickname, and kind of get there. And I'm glad I got a chance to kind of revisit this and take a look. So on the same vein, let me know if you like this. Let me know if you didn't. It's a different piece of content than normal, but it seemed like a good way to go about it. And thanks again to Julian for making such a cool video. If this was fun, maybe I'll do something like this again. But just let me know. And wow, Berlin, what good times. So that'll do it for today. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'll be back with some more Magic. Maybe not Elves, but that maybe can be arranged. So we'll see. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. It helps out the channel and you won't miss a single draft.